A peaceful day in the palace turns into a nightmare when Gospel is caught red-handed carrying the son of the TikTok Olori into her private apartment. No permission, no explanation, just a secret move that triggered a heavy confrontation. Now, the Golden King has spoken, but his words have left Gospel shattered in tears. A short prayer for you. May every hidden trap set against your household be exposed, and may your home be filled with the peace that surpasses all understanding. Amen. Welcome to Crown Gist. If you love the deepest updates and the realest stories, you are in the right place. To my Crown Gist friends and families, if you haven't joined the inner circle yet, hit that subscribe button right now. Don't let the next big gist pass you by. Before we dive into the heat of this matter, please understand that we respect the Yoruba culture deeply. Because of this, there are certain sacred names and rituals we will not mention directly. Instead, we use fictional names that you will perfectly understand as the story unfolds. The sun was shining brightly over the majestic land of Ife, but inside the palace walls, a cold wind of suspicion was blowing. You see, in a place as big and powerful as the palace of the Golden King, eyes are everywhere. Walls have ears, and even the birds that fly over the courtyard seem to carry whispers of the secrets hidden behind the heavy wooden doors. On this particular afternoon, the TikTok Olori was tucked away in her private workspace. As many of you know, she is a woman of many talents, especially when it comes to the world of fashion and design. She wasn't just playing, she was working under intense pressure. Huge orders for fabrics had come in from high-profile clients, and she needed to meet her deadline. Even though she has many people working under her assistants and tailors, there are certain clients whose clothes she insists on handling herself. She is a woman who believes in perfection, especially when her name is on the ladle. Because she was so occupied with her needles, threads, and expensive fabrics, she entrusted her two young children, her son and her daughter, to their nannies. She told them to take the children to the open play area within the palace ground so they could enjoy the fresh air and run around. It seemed like a normal, peaceful day. The nannies were there, watching over the little ones as they laughed and played in the beautiful Ife sun. But then, the atmosphere changed the moment Gospel appeared. Gospel was dressed in a very long, straight gown that swept the floor as she walked. She looked elegant, but there was a heaviness in her gaze. As she walked past the play area, the TikTok Olori's young son looked up and saw her. Now, children don't know about adult beef. They don't understand the silent wars and the cold shoulders between the women of the palace. To the little boy, Gospel was just a familiar face. He ran toward her with his tiny legs, his face lit up with a smile, and he grabbed the hem of her long dress. Gospel stopped. She looked down at the boy and picked him up. On the surface, it looked like a sweet moment. She greeted him warmly, smiling back at him, but the nannies, who were standing a few feet away, felt a sudden chill. They knew the history. They knew that Gospel and the TikTok Olori were not on speaking terms. In a place where trust is a luxury no one can afford, seeing Gospel carry that child felt like seeing a predator get too close to a lamb. If Gospel wanted to be wise, she should have greeted the boy right there in the open where everyone could see her. She should have played with him for a minute and then handed him back to the nannies. But that is not what happened. While holding the boy, Gospel's phone rang. She looked at the screen, picked up the call, and began to walk. But she didn't walk toward the nannies. She didn't stay in the playground with the TikTok Olori's son firmly in her arms. Gospel turned and walked straight into her own private apartment. She closed the door behind her. The playground went silent. The nannies looked at each other, their hearts racing. One of them began to tremble. She remembered the time before when a small mistake almost cost her everything. The TikTok Olori does not play when it comes to her children. She's a lioness. The nannies knew that if they didn't report this immediately and the TikTok Olori found out later, there would be massive wahala. We have to call her, one nanny whispered, her voice shaking. If we keep quiet and something happens inside that room, our heads will roll. Without wasting another step on, they sent word to the TikTok Olori. When the news reached the TikTok Olori in her fashion studio, she didn't scream, she didn't faint. She simply dropped her scissors and her eyes turned into something terrifying. The fear of a mother is a powerful thing, but the anger of a mother who feels her hive is in danger is even more explosive. She didn't ask questions, she didn't send a messenger, she marched out of her studio, her footsteps echoing through the hallways of the palace, heading straight for Gospel's door. She got to the door and began to knock with a force that threatened to bring the wood down. Her heart was thumping against her chest, a mix of pure adrenaline and raw panic. What was Gospel doing with her son behind the closed door? Why did she take him away from the nannies? The door opened. Gospel stood there, looking surprised. Behind her, the TikTok Olori saw her son sitting on the couch. He looked fine, but that didn't matter. The boundary had been crossed. The TikTok Olori stepped into the room, her presence filling the space with an intensity that made the air feel thin. "Bring my son to me now," she demanded, her voice vibrating with a rage that she was barely holding back. Gospel handed him over, but the TikTok Olori wasn't done. She raised her hand, her palm itching to land a dirty slap on Gospel's face. Her hand was trembling in the air. She looked Gospel in the eye and told her, "If not for the fear of God, I would have dealt with you right now. Have I not warned you? Have I not told you to stay away from my children?" Gospel tried to say something, perhaps to explain that she was just being kind, but the TikTok Olori wouldn't hear it. "This is the last warning I will ever give you. Don't you ever in your life go close to my kids again. If even a single hair is missing from his head, if anything goes wrong with him, you will hear from me in a way you will never forget." She clutched her son tightly to her chest and stormed out, leaving Gospel standing in the middle of her apartment, shocked and humiliated. The silence that followed was heavy. Gospel didn't just sit down, she collapsed into tears. She felt the weight of the rejection. She felt the sting of the TikTok Olori's words. But instead of reflecting on why her actions caused such a reaction, she felt a burning sense of injustice. She felt she had been treated like a criminal for simply showing affection to a child. In her mind, there was only one person who could fix this. One person who could tell the TikTok Olori that she was wrong. She wiped her eyes, straightened her dress, and made her way toward the chambers of the Golden King. She was going to report the assault and the threats. She was going to demand that the Golden King put the TikTok Olori in her place. But Gospel did not know that the Golden King of Ife sees more than what is presented on the surface. She did not know that her move into that apartment had changed the game entirely.
The news of the king's verdict hit the palace like a physical blow. You know how it is in the palace of Ife. News doesn't just travel, it flies on the wings of gossip. Within 1 hour, the guards at the gates, the cooks in the kitchen, and even the people sweeping the compound knew that the Golden King had told Gospel point blank that she was wrong. Gospel returned to her apartment, her heart heavy like a bag of cement. She locked her door and leaned against it, the tears she had been holding back in front of the king finally flowing freely. She wasn't just crying because of the almost slap from the TikTok Olori. She was crying because she realized like her influence was shaking. In her mind, she felt like the Golden King was supposed to be her shield, but instead he had turned into a mirror, showing her exactly where she messed up. "How can he say I am wrong?" she whispered to the empty room. "I only showed love to a child. Is it a crime to be a mother to the motherless?" But the words of the Golden King kept echoing in her head. "Why the closed door, Gospel? Why the closed door?" While Gospel was drowning in her tears, the TikTok Olori was in a different kind of state. She was in her quarters, pacing back and forth like a lioness that just escaped a trap. Her son was playing on the rug, completely unaware of the wahala his small actions had caused. She looked at him and felt a mixture of love and terrifying fear. She began to check his body again, looking at his hands, his neck, his hair, searching for any sign that something had happened in those few minutes he was alone with Gospel. The nanny stood in the corner, heads bowed, too afraid to even breathe loudly. They knew they had narrowly escaped being fired or worse. The TikTok Olori turned to them, her voice low but sharp like a new razor. "Listen to me and listen well," she told them. "If I ever, and I mean ever, see that woman near my children again, and you people don't scream for help, consider yourselves finished in this palace. I don't care if she says the king sent her. I don't care if she says she wants to give them gold. You stay away." As the night fell over Ife, the silence in the palace was deceptive. On the surface, everything looked calm, but underneath, the battle lines were being drawn. Gospel's friends, the few she had left, started sending her messages telling her to be strong and that the younger Olori is just trying to take over the palace. These words were like fuel to a fire. Gospel stopped crying and started feeling a cold, hard anger. She felt that the TikTok Olori was using her fashion business and her loud personality to brainwash everyone, including the Golden King. She felt that the respect she deserved as an older woman was being trampled upon because of the TikTok Olori's new school way of doing things. The next morning, the atmosphere was thick. Usually, when the Oloris meet in the common areas, there is a formal greeting even if it's fake. But when Gospel saw the TikTok Olori walking toward the garden, she didn't even look her way. She turned her head as if she had seen a ghost. The TikTok Olori on her part held her head high, walking with the confidence of a woman who knew she had the king's support. People started noticing the Cold War. The Ife elders began to whisper among themselves. They didn't like the tension. They knew that when the women of the palace are at war, the peace of the whole kingdom is at risk. Some elders felt the Golden King should have balanced the matter more. Maybe scold the TikTok Olori for the attempted slap, while also scolding Gospel for the child incident. But the king had made his choice and his word was final. Gospel decided she wouldn't so sit in her room and wither away. She started making strategic appearances. She would go to the palace chapel and pray loudly, making sure people saw her piety. She wanted to look like the godly, softened woman, while the TikTok Olori looked like the worldly, aggressive fashionista. But the TikTok Olori was not bothered. She was busy. Her fashion business was booming and she was getting calls from big clients in Lagos and Abuja. She felt that her success was her best revenge. But every time she looked at her son, that seed of doubt Gospel had planted by taking him inside her room started to grow. She began to wonder, is there something Gospel did that I haven't seen yet? This suspicion was exactly what Gospel wanted. She wanted the TikTok Olori to be looking over her shoulder. She wanted her to be restless. The drama was no longer about a near slap. It was now a psychological war. Who would break first? Would it be Gospel, who felt she had lost the heart of the king, or would it be the TikTok Olori, whose motherly instincts were keeping her on the edge of a breakdown?
As the sun began to set over the ancient city of Ife, the shadows in the palace grew longer, and so did the list of grievances between these two powerful women. You see, when a wound is not properly treated, it begins to fester, and that is exactly what happened after the Golden King gave his judgment. Gospel was not the type of woman to take a loss and go into the night quietly. No, she was a woman who believed in the power of the long game. While the TikTok Olori was busy with her sewing machines and her international clients, Gospel began a quiet, calculated campaign to win back the hearts of the people who mattered. She started by targeting the Ife elders. She knew that these men and women were the custodians of tradition. She knew they valued respect for age above almost anything else. Gospel began to visit them one by one. She wouldn't go there to complain loudly. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, she would go with gifts, acting very humble, kneeling low to greet them. When they would ask her, "Gospel, how are you? We heard there was small wahala in the palace," she would let a single tear drop. "My fathers," she would whisper, her voice shaking just enough to make them lean in. "I am fine. I am just a mother whose heart was misunderstood. I saw a child I love, a prince of this house, and I reached out to him.
I didn't know that in today's Ife, showing love to a child would lead to someone raising a hand to slap me. I didn't know that my age no longer carries weight in the eyes of the Golden King. This was a masterstroke. By framing it as a disrespect to tradition and age, she was hitting the elders where it hurt. They began to murmur among themselves. They started to look at the TikTok Olori with different eyes. They saw her success, her loud presence on social media, and her bold fashion, and they began to wonder, is this young woman becoming too powerful? Is she forgetting her place? But while gospel was playing the tradition card, the TikTok Olori was dealing with a very real and very deep fear. Even though the Golden King had supported her, she couldn't stop thinking about those minutes her son spent inside Gospel's apartment. She started noticing small things. If her son coughed, she would jump. If he didn't eat his food with his usual appetite, her mind would go straight back to that afternoon. She began to ask her spiritual advisors to come and pray. She was looking for peace, but the more she looked for it, the more restless she became. One afternoon, something happened that sent the palace into a total tailspin. One of the gardeners, while trimming the flowers near the entrance of the TikTok Olori's fashion studio, found something strange. It was a small black pot wrapped in a piece of red cloth tucked away behind a large decorative stone. This wasn't a fashion accessory. This wasn't a toy. This looked like something that belonged in a place of shadows. The gardener screamed and ran to call the guards. Within minutes, the TikTok Olori was there. When she saw the object, she didn't scream. She went deathly silent. Her mind went straight to gospel. In her heart, she was convinced that this was a follow-up to the child incident, a way to finish what was started behind that closed door. Call the Golden King, she commanded, her voice sounding like a general on a battlefield. And called gospel, let everyone see what is happening in this house. A Golden King arrived, and his face was a mask of disappointment. He looked at the object, then he looked at his wives. He saw the fire in the TikTok Olori's eyes and the look of innocent shock on Gospel's face. Gospel was the first to speak. Jehovah, waiting with this. If we do this kind thing for the palace of the Golden King, my king, you see, I tell you, say people they try frame me, they will go put this in here just to make me look bad again. The TikTok Olori laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Frame you? You were kind my picky enter house. Now you they talk about frame? This is your handwork gospel. You want to destroy my business because you know fit match my success. The Golden King raised his hand and the shouting stopped instantly. He looked at the Ife elders who had gathered and he looked at the object. He knew that the palace was no longer a home, it was a war zone. Enough, the king said. We will find out the truth. But from today, any woman who brings the name of this palace into the mud with these kinds of things will face the full weight of our ancestors' judgment. Gospel bowed her head, but inside she was smiling. She knew that even if she didn't put that object there, the suspicion was now everywhere. She had successfully turned the palace into a place of fear. And in a place of fear, nobody wins, but the person who started the fire gets to watch it burn.